Life is so brutal.
I'm better.
Time to up the stake. Feel your life drain away.
Force of all.
Feel and fight on.
Hello and welcome, Exiles. Today I have a build where I basically try to take as many unique items that are new in this league and throw them into one character. Not really intentionally, but initially the idea I was going to build around was straight up going to be Eternal Damnation plus Annihilations approach. Now, Annihilations approach, for those of you who don't know, it says, hey, when you're flame touched, you get 10,000 damage per second, Delta U is fire, and on the upside, you get adrenaline. And if you're thinking, man, that sounds bad, I hope Flame Touch has some other benefits to go along with it. Well, it doesn't. All it has is, here, have 10,000 degen for the price for exchange of adrenaline. Oh, also you have a boot slot that doesn't have life on it. So good luck with that. This boots, I'm forcing them into the build. I think there are a few scenarios where they make sense, and I'll go over those. But basically, to put it in perspective, 10,000 degen for a 5k life character is twice as much degen as I would get from just turning on Righteous Fire. And for the record, 40% more spell damage is a much stronger buff than a 25% cast speed and 100% increased damage buff. The movement speed feels good. It does have a quality of life thing going for it, but you are also trading a boot slot, which could have action speed, other resistances, avoidance for elemental ailments. Like, boot slots are extremely powerful. And I gotta be honest, I think for the Uber Exarch drop, this is kind of underwhelming. All the other Uber drops that we got added this league were kind of like bangers. They're all pretty good. This one is just straight up, it's probably more of a downside than it is an upside in most cases. There's a select few builds where I think you can make it work, and I'm trying my hardest to make it, this build is okay for this to be on my character and not be a bad thing. Now, that being said, it's still decent to have a nice little boost of damage and attack and cast and movement speed, something that you don't normally get a lot of in Juggernaut. You're a Juggernaut, by the way. Now, why are we a Juggernaut? Well, it's pretty simple. Unbreakable, and in combination with Eternal Damnation, the way it works is you have your resistance first, that takes off some of the damage. Then you have the basically additional reduction. This goes pre-armor calculation, which ends up making the armor mitigation to elemental damage more effective. So this item is just typically very good with Juggernauts. The other scenario where this item is very good is with something with Transcendence, where you can take basically all your physical as elemental. Those are where this item is going to shine the most. Now, when it comes to this item, my initial plan with this character to work around Eternal Damnation was actually going to be a champion, and I was going to stack percent damage reductions. Unfortunately, because I'm stupid and I'm learning new things every day about PoE, this stat, which is elemental damage reduction, is actually different than, for example, a stat that says reduced damage taken. So if I have this Juggernaut and it says 8% reduced elemental damage taken while at maximum endurance charges, and I have 35% additional elemental damage reduction, that doesn't equal 43%. It's not additive with each other. They're separate stats. They do separate things. I learned that because I made a champion, because I was going to build around a champion, and I was going to build around stacking close to 90% damage reduction if I added it all together. And unfortunately for me, I found out the hard way after leveling the character that just doesn't work like I thought it did. But it's really good for a Juggernaut, or really good for a Transcendence with Fizz taken as. Now, what else are we using? Well, entropic devastation was all the way down to like 1 or 2 divines for a perfect roll on these gloves. I felt like I was stealing it. I think these gloves are really cool. They enable a different way of building into a character, building into Fizz Impale spells. So I thought, you know what, I'll throw that into, I'll go Fizz Impale. And then I had a crit problem, so I had to throw in Sandstorm into the build too, because the crit, let's just say when you're a Juggernaut and you're trying to get spell crit and you're on this side of the tree, the amount of crit nodes that are available to my tree. Okay, I had a struggle getting crit. I ended up having to run crit clusters everywhere, crit on my Megalomaniacs. It was a struggle, but we were kind of close to the point where we're getting close to crit cap thanks to Sandstorm. I had to do it. Sandstorm was just the solution that saved me from having just terrible crit, basically. On top of that, the other items in the build are basically, I have an endurance charge relic. I decided I'll lean into that, you know, have some crazy fizz reduction, have some nice regen from Valakos. It's a really cheap node you can steal from Chieftain, has a bunch of regen on it. It's probably not the most OP node to steal. I probably would rather have the 40% more damage from the Berserker node, but that costs like 30 divines, and the endurance charge node costs like 1 divine for the entire set. So, you know, I made a judgment call there in terms of finances. Where I didn't make a judgment call was on the rest of my gear slots. That being said, when you're looking at this gear slot, I'm actually going to change a decent amount of this, because right now what I'm doing with Eternal Damnation and Juggernaut is I'm doing Divine Flesh. My theory behind this is basically, if I split the damage up and make only half the damage taken as elemental, then I have the reduction based on Eternal Damnation, and then I have the armor calculation. I'm starting to divide and pick away that elemental damage, and my armor gets more and more effective. That was my thought process. Unfortunately, I think it's too heavy of a downside, because it mitigates how well I can fully basically defeat Flame Touched as a downside. So I'm actually going to be changing some things. I'm probably going to be moving to Tempered by War. I'm probably going to be going to 90 max fire res, because right now I'm running Righteous Fire and I'm running the Flame Touch degen. I have 15k base fire degen per second on my character, and I have some wacky, basically capped resistances through this Chaos Res mod on my belt. I want to change some gearing. I want to switch around what I'm doing here, because right now I don't 100% like the consistency of it, and I think I can fix a lot of the mitigations. In fact, I think I can make them better. So that's going to be another video. I'm going to recraft some things, but the general idea was, if I have the Fracture to reduce chaos damage taken over time mod, I have the Pantheons with the reduced damage taken over time, and I have the 5% reduced chaos damage taken over time. If half the damage goes to chaos and I'm degenning, but I have high max chaos res on this character, when I actually have my flasks on, I have 86 max chaos res, which ends up making 86, and then you have 14% of the damage left over, and then you cut that by another 40%. It's close to like 92 effective max res-ish in terms of mitigation. I don't know if that math is correct, but it's close to something like that in terms of taking away the amount of degen I'm suffering from the chaos. And then the other half goes to elemental, which goes to 71 res, and then reduced by this. There's too much damage getting through, in my opinion now. Too much of my build is built around, if I don't have these flasks up for my res capped off, which is a problem in of itself that I need to fix. But also on top of that, on top of wanting the res to be always capped without flasks, without the scuffed setup going, I also want the mitigation to be higher, because right now it's like my character would have very insane regen, but so much of it is taken up by this massive degen and me trying to force an Annihilations approach. So I think if I swap it to 90 max fire res plus the elemental mitigation plus like a ruby, then it starts to get to the point where this self damage I'm dealing really gets reduced so heavily that it becomes to be not that big of a downside. That being said, I will also say, and this is when I say the use case for this boot is limited, the use case I see this boot is basically limited to a build where you're already stacking 90 max fire res and some level of less fire damage taken. I think our RF character can maybe make this work if you don't want to have Legacy of Fury, if you want to have like an explode chest. I think you can make this work. But stuff like that, it's hard to fit into the build because it's just such a massive downside. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on Annihilations approach. I think largely it is bait, largely for a uber drop specific. It's kind of like, this thing just gets you killed. I'll show you what it looks like. If I, for example, hop into an area and I forget to press my flask to cap my res, for example, say I was a character that didn't have the crazy mitigation I do, this is what it would look like when I turn on the boot slot. This is what it would look like. Now, I accidentally pressed my endurance cry, which gave me endurance charges, so we're gonna have to wait for those to run out. But say I'm sustaining or whatever, I've killed myself this way multiple times. I go AFK, okay? I go AFK, I forget that I have the boot mod on, and it just PKs me. So that is a thing that happens when you use Flame Touch. If you don't have that mitigation in that straight up sustain setup, I've killed myself, I think, once or twice in Sanctum now, just because I was like looking at an accursed pact and I forgot that my endurance charges were going to run out because I was sustaining fine with endurance charges, and then I'm not proccing endurance cry, so I'm not generating them, and I just PK myself, and that was a little embarrassing. So we're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix that. That's gonna be, I have some plans for changes that I think should basically net us defenses and net us a massive amount of regen on top of what we already have. I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a showcase of a map real quick. We'll do, what's a Guardian I haven't done yet? I don't think I've done Hydra on my Alice yet. No, I haven't done Hydra. Okay. Make sure it doesn't have Fizz Reflect. It has less recovery rate. I am not running less recovery rate because I can't. I don't have the regen for that. I have a bunch of, I have a Wandering Path tree with a bunch of increased effective node of basically whatever's on the thing, which bricks my ability to, what's the word? It bricks my ability to have mods like less recovery rate, because instead of 60% less recovery rate, it ends up becoming like 80%, which is just like a massive amount of my regen is gone now, which feels pretty bad. So there's gonna be some swaps around. I'm gonna be swapping out a Tempest Shield. I'm gonna be swapping in Reduced Shock Pantheon. I'm gonna be changing some tree to get a couple aura nodes just to get a little bit of aura effect and more max res out of that. Stuff like that I'm gonna go for. But basically, while you're mapping, while you're doing stuff and you're paying attention and your flasks are on, very comfortable, fantastic defenses. When I'm not paying attention and I go AFK, Flame Touch kills me. So that is a portion of the problem I need to fix with the character. Another thing that I'm also going to be fixing with this character is, right now I don't have Corrupted Blood immunity. And when I was trying to record that Cirrus kill, that Uber Cirrus kill, I didn't die to anything but Corrupted Blood. And let me tell you, doing Uber Cirrus without Corrupted Blood immunity is really, really annoying. Because he can barely hit you, just barely tick you with the diving, and you go instantly to 8 max Corrupted Blood stacks, which is a lot of degen, on top of the fact that I haven't had Flame Touches on this whole time, so I've been mapping at subpar speeds. My bad, guys. My bad. I forgot to click the button. You can see Flame Touch, you know, it's a very feels good buff. Obviously, we move much faster when we have it on. That is the upside. Alright, let's go ahead and kill the boss. No, he teleported away too fast, but one of the things about having Impale as well is we have a bit of like damage ramp, because until we get those additional hits in, every single hit we impale once, and once you get up to 7 impales, that's when you start having basically every hit you deal is dealing like another 120 or 140% damage or something like that. Stacking the impales, you start out a little bit slower, and then the damage really just picks up because the impales start to get stacked up. But the damage is good. Right now, the budget, probably higher than I want it to be. There's things I could do to basically decrease the budget. For example, right now I have an Enlighten 4. With the tree change, I'm going to be able to fit in Purity of Fire, take out Tempest Shield, and get rid of Enlighten. So that'll save another 11 Divines on the budget of my character. I'm also going to be swapping out this shield, probably making a worse one, which is going to save budget on this. I got really lucky crafting this, but this thing's like an insane shield, so the cost of it makes the build much more expensive for the perspective of looking at the build. Next video I post will be with a different shield, probably not as good as this one. I highly doubt I will get as lucky crafting my shield as I did with this shield, for example. So, stuff like that will start saving money on the character. Anyways, that is the video for my Eternal Damnation, Annihilations approach, entropic devastation, and Sandstorm, basically using all the new uniques and having a good time with it for a Juggernaut. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video. As always, thank you for watching. Take care, Exiles.